Sit in this chair for 1,000 years and watch the woods consume the neighborhood. Watch the ambitions come and go, surround me and engulf me. We could ditch the TV and spend a little more time reading books and singing songs on the porch. Sit here watching the daylight wane, leaving little trace and even less memory. I just want to be still.
Hi, my name is Lee Nish, pastor of Sparks United Methodist Church. Welcome to worship. You know, back in the 1970s, a guy by the name of Hal Lindsey wrote a book that was based on some dubious interpretation of certain texts in the book of Revelation that was called The Late Great Planet Earth. And that just spawned a whole bunch of imaginary, fictional opportunities for authors to chime in and to talk about what would happen if God just decided to close the entire operation. Well, then that was followed in the 1990s by a guy by the name of Tim LaHaye. And he started to co-wrote actually, a series of books called Left Behind. It was all based on what it might be like if the rapture happened and all the good people ascended to heaven and all the rest were left to fend for themselves on earth. Well, that whole fictional series kind of wound down over the decades. We just decided, well, it hasn't happened yet. Probably not going to happen in my lifetime. But what we did understand was this. Sometimes we think of those who are left behind as the least, the last, and the lost. They're not the ones who are going to be chosen by God. But what we're going to find out in this new series of messages, which begins today, is that the lost are the very ones who God cares about and loves most deeply. And it invites us to share our love through God's compassion out to them. So welcome to this new series, Left Behind, the Lost.
Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, your perfect love is casting out fear. And even when I'm caught in the middle of the storms of this life, I won't turn back, I know you are near, and I will fear no evil, for my God is with me, and if my God is with me, whom then shall I fear? Whom then shall I fear? Oh no, you never let go through the calm and through the storm. Oh no, you never let go in every high and every low. Oh no, you never let go, Lord, you never let go of me. And I can see a light that is coming for the heart that holds on, a glorious light beyond all compare. And there will be an end to these troubles, but until that day comes, I live to know you here on the earth, and I will fear no evil, for my God is with me, and if my God is with me, whom then shall I fear? Whom then shall I fear? Oh
Hi, my name's Ted Larson, and I'm reading Luke 15, 1 through 3 and 11 through 32 from the NRSV, the parable of the prodigal and his brother. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus, and the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So Jesus told them this parable. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me." So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in desolate living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout the land, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But then he came to himself and said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to the father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the father said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing, and he called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got him back safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours comes back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come back to life. He was lost and has been found.'"
My wife and I recently returned from a ski vacation that we took in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. It was our 35th wedding anniversary, and indeed, it was important to us because we went to Steamboat Springs on our honeymoon. And in fact, we've been there quite a few times over the years because it's one of our favorite ski mountains. We're both skiers and we enjoyed the very dry powder there. But you know, Steamboat Springs, like most of the ski areas, ski resorts today, have a downloadable app. You can download the Steamboat app onto your phone. And the beauty about the app is that it tracks where you and your party are on the mountain at any given time. And when you're skiing down different slopes, it's easy to lose track of each other. But all you have to do is take a look at the tracker on the app, and not only will it tell you where you're at, it will tell you where your other party is at, and then you can connect with them. It's just one of the convenient ways that technology has allowed us to make it less likely that we will get lost from each other and left behind. But getting lost is serious. It really does happen from time to time. Our children gave my wife a gift because she goes off hiking quite a bit on her own and snowshoeing. It's called a Garmin, and it has a direct connection with a satellite so that if she finds that she is lost or in trouble, she can actually communicate through the Garmin, through the satellite, to others who are connected to let them know of her location and the fact that she needs help. There's a lot of technology out there that really is being developed even now to make it less likely that we're going to either get lost or left behind. In fact, my son, who recently graduated from Stanford University, has really focused on GPS systems, and together with some of his friends started a company called Zona Space Systems. And what he's going to do is share with you a little bit about the exciting technology that that company is developing to make sure that it's even harder to get lost or left behind.
Hi, my name is Andrew Nish, and I am the son of the famous Lee and Joanne Nish. Today, I'd like to introduce our company, Zona Space Systems. Some of us find ourselves lost sometimes, but here at Zona, we're trying to make it so that that happens just a little less often. GPS is a technology that many of us use today, and it helps us figure out specific things like our latitude and longitude. And when we use that type of information with mapping technology provided from companies like Google and Apple, then we can find out what streets we're on and get our turn-by-turn directions so that we can get to where we're trying to get to. And at Zona, what we're trying to do is enhance the space-based side of this technology so that we can get down to much higher accuracy, which can enable many new technologies and opportunities. And so what we are doing is providing the first dedicated commercial low Earth orbiting positioning service, where with our signals, we'll provide higher precision, more accuracy than GPS. So we're talking accuracy in inches and not yards. We'll be able to provide higher power, so you'll have higher resilience against any type of interference. And we're also providing more protection. So we're providing protection against any nefarious actors who might try to hack your position. We already have one demonstration satellite that's already in view and demonstrating this technologies, and within the next several years, more of these satellites will be launching, and your location will start to become more and more accurate. Now, we don't do the maps side of things, so the next time your GPS app on your phone tells you to make a wrong turn down the wrong street, we won't be able to kind of help you fix that, but you will be able to use our satellites to position yourselves within inches on that wrong street that you took a turn down. So with that, thank you for your time, and I'd like to hand it back over to you, Dad.
But of course, there's a different way that we get lost. It's not always simply getting lost geographically. In fact, I would say predominantly, the most likely way people get lost in this day and age is spiritually. And with the decline of churches and religion across America, there's much more likely, it is much more likely that people will get lost and left behind spiritually because they don't have the help of a faith community to keep them on track with spiritual practices and other things that would keep them connected to God. And you know, maybe this is something that you are dealing with. Obviously, worshiping online is an important way we connect with people and keep contact. But if that is the sole way that we connect, sometimes we don't develop those relationships that can be most helpful to us. You know, one of the reasons that I love the Gospel of Luke is that there is a whole section in the Gospel devoted to the lost. And just as the Gospel of Matthew has those wonderful chapters 5, 6, and 7 that really are the essential teachings of Jesus that we call the Sermon on the Mount, so also you have in Luke the central experiences that Jesus encounters when he continues to travel and execute on his mission, which according to Luke chapter 19, verse 10, is specifically this. He says, the Son of Man came to seek out and save the lost. And what we find is in those chapters 15 through 19, Jesus is demonstrating how it is so much on God's heart to seek out and save the lost, so much so that God sent his Son to carry on that mission. And at the end of his Son's life, he sent us to carry on that same mission. Chapter 15 launches this series of stories, and it starts with the lost sheep, continues with the lost coin, and then we get to the real serious story of the lost son. And the story goes that the son, having very little regard at all for his family, his father, his brother, just goes to his father and says, even though you're not dead yet, let me have my share of the property because it's time for me to go off. I'm going to leave you behind. And so the father accommodates the request of his son, and his son goes off and has a great time for a while until, you guessed it, the money ran out. And so he had to hire himself out to get a job, and there were just very low-level, low-paying jobs available in the place where he was. And so he came to the point where he said, you know, I don't get this. Here I am, even having a worse life than my father's hired servants. I'm going to go back to my father and say, I have sinned against you and against God. Please accept me back into the family only as a hired servant. Take me on, and I will work for you. Now that's his plan. And then we get to verse 20. And verse 20 in this text really reveals so much about the heart of God. I want you to hear it again because it's worth repeating many, many times. So he set off and went to his father, but while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. Did you get that? While he was still far off, his father saw him, and he was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. That is the very essence of who I have come to believe God to be, and I think that this is captured so beautifully in this text from the Gospel of Luke. And as I say, it launches a series of stories where Jesus is seeking out and saving the lost, just as the Father was seeking to recover his Son. Now, I want to just share with you why I think this particular line is important. Number one, God sees his Son while he is still far off. That means the Son is not coming and knocking at the door and seeing if anyone's home. Our Father in heaven keeps track of us. No matter where we wander, no matter how far from home we go. And the one thing that our Father wants more than anything else is to maintain that relationship, to keep that close connection. And so our Father sees us when we are still far off. Spiritually, what that means is when we are far off the mark, when we are not living the lives that we know we should live, when we are not receiving the fruit of God's grace that we know we could receive with a closer relationship with God. That's point number one. Point number two is God not only sees him, God runs towards him. Now, in ancient culture, it is not really appropriate for a father to run toward a son. But you know what? Propriety is put out the window. When Jesus tells this story, what he's really telling us is that wherever you are, God is eager to run toward you and to embrace you. And that embrace, guess what? It involves putting God's arms around you, hugging you and claiming you as God's own. If you feel like you are spiritually lost, I want you to hear these words. God is not about to have you left behind. God is seeing you no matter how far off you are. And all you need to do is make the first step to return, and God will run toward you, and God will embrace you. You know, it's been said of this story that nobody is really quite sure about how sincere the son was when he started to make up the story that he would tell his father. All we know about the son is he was fed up with the way he was living. And so he comes up with these lines, he rehearses them, and as he greets his father, as the father greets him, he begins to repeat these lines. Sincerity is a big question in what we would consider justly forgiving and accepting somebody back into the family. We're having an interesting twist on that right now with a very high profile, very well-known attorney in South Carolina called Alec Murdaugh. And he decided to go on the stand himself in a murder trial to try to demonstrate to the jury that he did not kill his son and his wife. And the big question for the jury is this: is this man sincere? Is he telling us the truth? Or is it some story that he concocted in order to get left off the hook in a murder trial? Can I tell you that God never, ever asks for sincerity? God sees you. And no matter what story you come up with, no matter what words you have, the moment you turn back toward God, that time you take that first step, God runs toward you. God embraces you. And God never asks you for the sincerity of your heart, nor does he ask you to pay back all the money that you've squandered. Oh, there may be other members of the family who might be a little jealous of that. We know that the brother was not too excited to receive his own brother back into the family. But you know, that's our problem. We are told and inspired to emulate the love, the compassion of the Father, not the dubious questioning of the Son. And so in this story, I would ask you, if you need to come home as your brother, I want to see you even when you're far off. I want the opportunity to exercise the same compassion that God exercised in this story when the Father ran toward him. If you're looking for a place where you will be accepted no matter what your background, no matter how far you've wandered, you're going to be welcomed here. At least online, and if you're close to Sparks United Methodist Church, I hope you will enter our doors at some point. All you need to do is just identify yourself to me, and I will welcome you, and we as a family of faith will welcome you, because the last thing we want to do is neglect the very mission that Jesus was sent to accomplish. And that is, as we understand, the Son of Man was sent to seek out and to save the lost. So whatever during this season we may decide to leave behind, the last thing we who are the people of faith should ever consider leaving behind is the lost.
Listen and hear the whispers of his heart. God is calling. Listen and hear the whispers of his heart. God is calling. You are precious in his eyes. You he honors, in you he delights. You are his chosen, you are his child. He treasures your time, sit with him for a while. And listen and hear the of his heart. God is calling. Listen and hear the whispers of his heart. God is calling. God is patient. God is wise. He watches each day of your life. He knows your worries and he knows your cares. He longs for your voice. Come to him with your prayers and listen and hear the whispers of his heart. God is calling. Listen and hear the whispers of his heart. God is calling. God is calling. God is calling.
Hello, my name is Cindy Evans, and I'm so glad you've been here today. And I hope that the message that Lee has brought and the songs have spoken to you in a way that God is working in your life today. And if you ever need to speak to someone else, be sure and fill out a connection card or a prayer request and see if we can connect you up with someone who might want to pray with you or just be someone to talk to, because we're all God's community. Will you pray with me? God of love, creation, God of transformation, God who meets us wherever we are. We thank you that you came down onto earth because you so much wanted us to know your love and that we were ready to receive it. Help us to be ready to receive the message of your love, whether we've known about you for a long, long time, and whether we stayed right by your side or we walked away, or it's our first inklings about your greatness and your presence and your want and desire for us to know kindness and love. Hear our prayers, O Lord. And we pray for those who are on our hearts right now, the situations on our hearts. And hear us now as we pray together the prayer that Jesus taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. May God be with you in the coming week.
Hey, thanks for joining us for worship today. And look, if you are part of the church, you know that the season that we're in is the season of Lent. And a lot of times we talk about, well, what are you going to give up for Lent? Or what are you going to leave behind for Lent? Well, some of you may just decide you're going to leave alcohol behind for Lent. You're going to leave sweets behind, desserts behind. Whatever you decide to leave behind, for the sake of the mission of Jesus the Christ, who came to seek out and save the lost, whatever you decide to leave behind, do not decide to leave the lost behind. And if you count yourself, as we all do from time to time, as being part of the lost, you know you have a home here with God's called and compassionate people. Wherever you are, come home, and whoever you are, if you're in the church already, go out, because there are a lot of opportunities to seek out and to save the lost. Go change the world.
Thanks for joining us here at Sparks UMC. You can connect and join the conversation on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. To receive the weekly emails that share what's happening in the Sparks UMC community, scan the QR code on the screen or let us know by filling out the Connect card on our website. If you would like prayer, email us at sparksumcprayers@gmail.com or scan the code. We are grateful for your support of the ministry and mission of Sparks UMC. We'll see you next time. Be blessed.